Approximately 1 in 5 people suffer from an autoimmune disease. An autoimmune disease is a condition arising from an abnormal immune response to a normal body part. There are at least 80 types of autoimmune diseases. The cause is generally unknown. Some autoimmune diseases, such as lupus, run in families, and certain cases may be triggered by infection or environmental factors. Some common diseases that are generally considered autoimmune include celiac disease, diabetes type 1, Graves' disease, inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and Hashimoto's. We recognize that you need some help if you are suffering from one of these autoimmune diseases. That is why we have created our therapeutic autoimmune program. The program is a 13-week program in which you'll have weekly check-in calls with your very own nutrition coach. Your nutrition coach will help you out with all things nutrition and lifestyle to help you better your symptoms. If you are suffering from an autoimmune disease, you do not have to do it alone. The team at The Chief Life are here to support you 100% of the way. You can find out more about the therapeutic autoimmune program on our website, www.thechieflife.com, and look underneath the nutrition tab. Guys, what is up? I just wanted to quickly let you know that we are now running free nutrition consults at www.thechieflife.com. You can book in for a quick 15-minute consult where we get to talk about all things nutrition, all things lifestyle with one of our fantastic nutrition coaches. So if that is something that you feel you are in need of, please jump across to www.thechieflife.com. Can't wait to see you guys booking in. Welcome to the Chief Life Podcast,
where we deliver guests and knowledge from around the world right to your ears.
Focusing on nutrition, exercise, health, and wellness.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Give you a reflection of, and if you don't lie to yourself, then you really know where you are versus where you want to be. And then I think that sets a course for how do you get there.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we always tried to advertise it as, rather than it being like anything else other than that. That's all we ever wanted it to be was, hey, where are you at compared to where do you want to be? And how can we kind of almost pay a little stepping stone to get you there right now?
I think it does a great job doing that. And that's why I wanted to take it myself, because it's important for me to understand what you are trying to accomplish and what your listeners are trying to accomplish with you. And then how can I add to that conversation? Yeah. How can I be of value to you and them? Yeah. And I think that's probably what this podcast could be about. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I love that. That's awesome. I mean, to be honest, there's not many guests that we have on our show that will go and do the pre-work that you've done, which I really appreciate. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. I mean, how else would I don't understand why they wouldn't, because what you develop there is a system to help people. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to add to that conversation, instead of just talk around some noise, right? Yeah. Then I have to add to that conversation knowing what I'm adding and why I'm adding it. Yeah. Agreed. And that way we spend the time together valuably for you and them. Mm-hmm.
No, that's awesome. All right, well, let's get things rolling. It's already been recording, but we'll kick it off properly. So, guys, welcome back to the Chief Life Podcast. I am Matthias Turner, and today I'm very excited. I've got Garry Millet with me. Now, Garry, you're from a company which is called Real Ketones, and I've been utilizing your product for the last probably 30 days or so. And I think I'm a pretty good subject right at the moment, because we have just had Madeline, our little baby girl. She's 3 weeks old. So I've been sleep deprived. I've also still been trying to train. I've always kept a good grasp on my nutrition. And some days, whilst we've had, like probably in the first week, there was a few days where probably my carbohydrates blew out a little bit more than what they typically would on a regular day. But I mean, I'm someone who actually at the moment is following a bit more of a carb cycling protocol, and it's not necessarily always to a T right now because of my situation. But something I've added in is the Real Ketones products, and I've utilized a few of the different ones, and I've really enjoyed a few of them. Probably my favorite has been the keto energy shots as a little pre-workout in particular while I've been a little tired maybe before training. It's like a good little kickstart to the session, and I've really enjoyed that. But I think in regards to why I say maybe I'm a good subject is the fact that I'm not following a ketogenic diet. Yes, I have high fat days, and yes, I have high carbohydrate days, but I think it's just a straight out proof that you don't need to be in ketosis, or you don't need to be on a ketogenic diet to be utilizing these supplements. Just like, for instance, someone might not need to be bodybuilding to be taking creatine, I think is maybe a good comparison as such. But maybe let's dive into you a little bit more, Garry. Like, I mean, you've got a background in chemistry and biology, so how did you kind of step into this realm?
Well, myself and my partner, Rob, are serial entrepreneurs. And so this opportunity came to us I'd say about 6 years ago, end of 2012.
Yep.
And Rob was introduced to a friend of his that said, "Hey, I'm looking into this ketone thing." And, Rob got me on the phone and goes, "Hey, have you ever heard of a ketone?" And I said, "Wow, yeah, that's reaching back into the biochemistry annals." I'm educated as a CPA as well, and have been doing business for a long time. So that really did tap the old memory boards. So after we had a chance to explore that a little bit, we got introduced to a fellow named Dominic D'Agostino.
Mm-hmm. He's kind of like the godfather of it at the moment, right?
Yeah, he's really been, he was kind of instrumental in bringing forth, maybe practically how would exogenous ketone supplementation help people.
Yeah. And
specifically, he was contracted by the Department of the Navy to research how they could reduce seizures in Navy SEAL divers. And so he himself went through a bit of discovery and came up with, interestingly enough, looking at epileptic seizure and how does epileptic seizure mirror that Navy SEAL type of seizure, and what were applications or mediations to epilepsy. And he found the ketogenic diet. So going beyond that, I don't think you can force all the Navy SEALs into a ketogenic diet.
No.
To your point. But you can supplement them into increasing their blood ketone levels to such a point where the seizures were diminished, or if not diminished, eliminated. So that kind of set forth, in talking to Dominic, some wheels in my mind, and going back to all of the TCA, the Krebs cycle, I dug back into the work, and I came back and I said to Rob, I said, you know what, there is really something here. Not sure what it is, but there's something here. And so over the course of the last 6 years, we pretty much brought this whole concept of ketone supplementation into the forefront, into an industry, if you will, and kind of kicked off what exogenous ketones can do to help so many different people in so many different ways. And so that's kind of a history of how we got involved. And now in the meantime, we've continued that research. And at this point, we've actually secured a total of 6 patents here. We are working on another 10 patents involving ketones. So a large part of this is really kind of understanding that whole ketone science, if you will. And I think we are one of the firms that really believe in continuing that research, continuing that pioneering, continuing applications on how can we make that better. So a lot of my time is devoted to that space. We've learned a lot about ketones that we can even talk about later in the podcast if you'd like. Yes,
definitely. Yeah.
But the whole catharsis of this, we went from a position where people were telling us you're insane, okay, to telling us you're brilliant. So we went from shame to fame just because we had the tenacity and the wherewithal not to believe what we read. And I think that takes a lot of, entrepreneurial spirit to do that. And since that's really what our creed is, it didn't take long for us to, in fact, get behind that and then push that into a variety of different places, a variety of different companies, different applications. And here we are today talking with you. So
I love that. I think something that sorry, go on.
We really certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners, that's for sure.
Oh, likewise. And something I was about to say is like something I love what you guys are doing, Garry, is the fact that you put so much more into the studies. It's not that often that you come across a supplement company that would be putting the time and effort back into their own products to say, hey, look, this is why it works and this is how it works. And these are the extra things we're finding out because we're doing the studies. So many companies will just say, for instance, start a protein company and they sell their protein and that's it. They don't do the studies into their own products. And I think that's where it becomes so valuable because you know that you guys are always trying to be better. And maybe that's the entrepreneurial side of you guys. But I feel like, the desire to always be better is something that really kind of draws me into you.
I appreciate that very much. You can't believe how, when you're sitting there writing 7-digit figure numbers in order to prove concepts, you have to be dedicated to want to know. And I think that, our creed is that if I'm going to take it and I'm going to believe it, and this is the way Rob believes as well, if we're going to be part of this, if we're going to say to you, Matty, this will improve your life, then I believe we have an obligation to prove that it can. And so many nutraceutical companies simply throw stuff out that's hot, and then they go on to the next thing that's hot.
Yeah.
And you've heard LeBron James and a couple of these other guys talking about supplements, on how 95% of the supplements really don't do anything or don't work. And for the most part, as we got more and more into the supplement business, one of the things we did learn is that somebody will mark an ingredient saying, hey, I have this active ingredient. But the problem is they have about a fifth of what's needed to even be efficacious.
Yeah.
So a lot of herb types of supplements fall into that category, is that a study has been shown to be effective, but you have to take 12 times more than the supplement contains.
Yeah.
So I guess back to your point is, if we're going to believe it, if we're going to take it, if we put our name behind it, and we just want to be the icon out there that if you buy a Real Ketones product, it works. So at some point, if you want to go through what studies we have done and what it means to your listeners, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely what I want to dive into. I think maybe a good place to start though is like let's dive to the basics. What are ketones and why are they important?
So ketones are basically, if you think of it, everybody kind of knows what a glucose molecule is. It's an energy molecule that the body metabolizes through its cells into energy, right? And that energy we call ATP. So a ketone is the same type of a molecule, meaning it's an energy molecule. And the only difference is glucose molecules are formed by metabolizing carbohydrates, and a ketone molecule is created from metabolizing fats. Okay. Now there are some very unique differences between those two molecules. For instance, the amount of energy that a ketone molecule will have in it per gram is about 2.5 times that of what glucose has.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those people saying, gee, how do I get the maximum amount of thrust out of the smallest amount of gram weight? Ketones are your game. Okay. The second one that I think is very interesting for cellular health, as well as, keeping us looking good and keeping us healthy, is this idea of how do we prevent oxidative stress within our cells, okay? Because, nobody needs premature cell death. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that ketones does is it creates about 45 times fewer free radicals than glucose when you burn that in your cell.
Yeah.
So essentially the contamination, the cleanest fuel you could have is a ketone versus, say, glucose. Okay. So what happens, and why don't you have ketones all the time? That would be another good question to ask for the listeners, is that usually in our regular cycle, in our basic cycle, the body is equipped with two energy systems. One is glucose and one is ketones. Mm-hmm. Okay. When the body is deprived of glucose, it automatically kicks into the different energy cycle and called ketogenesis. And so essentially it starts metabolizing your fat into triglycerides. Those triglycerides then are eventually converted to ketones, and ketones is what essentially is fueling your body. So ketones, if you think about it, real simply, it's another very, very powerful fuel that has a lot of interesting characteristics that we want to get ourselves attached to. I think the other thing that your listeners would appreciate is how the body looks at ketones. Okay, the brain wants all of them. So as soon as you put ketones in your body, your brain wants the most ketones it can get. So your brain, your heart, your central nervous system, anything that's neurologically centered loves ketones. And it's basically kind of a hog. It'll allow your body to convert fatty acids directly in your muscles for energy, but it wants all the ketones for itself. So we start looking at, and when people get into a heavy diet, you've seen this yourself. You've done intermittent fasting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You get kind of an euphoric feeling when those ketones start kicking in. You get that mental clarity, that increased focus, that mood change upward to, wow, I can do just about anything. That's ketone energy that's hitting your brain, and your brain's saying, thanks, Matty. I really appreciate you delivering some of that today. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really good. It's very insightful and a really easy way to understand it. When it comes to endogenous versus exogenous ketones, so exogenous being the ones that we, like your supplements, for instance, coming from out of the body compared to the endogenous ketones, what is the difference majorly apart from them being out of the body? Like, is it pretty much we put them into the body and they get utilized the exact same as if they were in the body already?
That's a great question. The ketone that you're taking, that you're making exogenously, mm-hmm. Endogenously, that basically is bioidentical to the ketone that you're taking exogenously.
Yeah.
So from a molecular point of view, those are identical molecules. Okay. The body will treat those molecules exactly the same.
Wow.
So either you're making them or you're taking them. Mm-hmm. But as far as the body goes, it goes, wow, Matty's got some ketones. Let's take them and use them. Okay. So what we've been able to demonstrate over time, initially, remember this old saying, glucose was the preferred fuel of the body?
Yep.
That's complete nonsense. Okay. So the second Matty has ketones, it will preferentially uptake the ketones over the glucose. And a couple of reasons why is interesting. There's nothing you do to store ketones. So it's basically use them or lose them. Okay. With glucose, it goes, we're not quite using all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly store those into fat.
Become a car with extra jerry cans.
Yeah. So, those extra carbs that you're taking now, that you might not be burning off because you have a newborn, right? Those are quickly formulated into those really cool thing called lipids. And those kind of settle around in a man, around our gut, and in a woman, kind of around the backside.
Yeah.
So the body is so efficient at storage. In fact, if you think about it, I propose you this: the body's main objective is food and energy storage, not food and energy usage.
Yeah, I would agree.
And because survival is the number one priority of the human body. So anytime it can store anything, it does it, and it takes away from that bikini body and it takes away from that muscle body. It just goes, man, rainy day coming up, I'm storing.
Yep.
And so what I think is fun about really talking through all that is understanding and respecting. And I guess I come from a different point of view sometimes than some of the science people that we do meet. And that is the respect for the human body can never be discounted. It is the most sophisticated engine on the planet. And its sophistication just dwarfs any knowledge we have. And I'm always surprised how we try to so-called biohack it, and it ends up biohacking us. And so if you think about it, the most important thing you could do for your body is why not give it the energy that it prefers? And we believe that's ketone energy. So for the first time, science now in the last 4 or 5 years has been able to synthesize and develop bioidentical ketones that the body wants, the body utilizes very, very efficiently. And now, instead of having to go through the catabolic phase of the keto flu or ketogenesis or the strict keto diets in order to maintain the body's endogenous capability, we now have the ability to share that same ketone exogenously. And I think from that standpoint, it opens a world to lots of different people. And, one of the things that I feel kind of passionate about, and we do, is, it used to be, I've changed my opinion in a lot of ways about a lot of things. And obviously, there are people that I mean, look at you. You're like you're like the epitome of physical fit.
Thank you.
And it's easy for us to say, you know what? Why doesn't that person just get up and exercise? It's so easy for us to say, when we're fit, why doesn't somebody get fit? What's preventing that? And so, we sit here and we look at what things like that, and we say to ourselves judgmentally, which of course I did in the past too, why doesn't that person just not eat? And why doesn't that person just exercise, right? Isn't that the old how to get in shape and how to be the best you can be?
Yep.
And there's some truth to that. But here's what I want to propose to you. What if somebody can't get off the couch? What if they physically or mentally, because of whatever limitation, they can't do it?
Yeah.
What if exogenous ketones was able to help those people get off the couch?
Have you guys seen that? Has that happened? Like mentally? Sorry, go on. Yeah.
We have so many people, so much interest in chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah.
and the use of ketones for just an energy threshold to get up. And so it opens a brand new world. When you feed your body pure energy, and that pure energy of ketones, right? You might be able to do things you've never been able to do before. You may feel a different way than you've ever felt before. Okay. And you're proof of it. You're taking exogenous ketones. I live a ketogenic lifestyle and I take them every day.
Yeah.
Because it's a different feeling. Taking exogenous ketones, you get that feeling. And for your listeners who've not had that feeling, all we say is try it. Try what that feeling feels like. Try how you feel about it. And then make your assessment on where you want to go from there. But we're talking about real life conditions where somebody maybe just can't get off the couch, and maybe we can help them.
Yeah, it's unreal. And I think as a user of the product, I think it's a good way to say it is it just feels like you're a bit more alert. It gives you a different alertness to what you'd probably have. And like I said, utilizing the energy shots that I've been having, the keto energy shots I've been having before training, that has made a big difference to not only my actual training, but my mindset going into training. On days where I haven't felt like going to train, all of a sudden I have this little keto shot and it changes my mind a little bit, to be honest. It gives me that little bit of extra alertness and willingness to train.
Okay. So now you're getting, I'm loving this conversation because you're getting into my favorite product. Okay.
Yeah.
So the keto shot is not only the newest invention. Okay. But we have applied for a patent on that particular product.
Okay.
And I'll tell you and your listeners why. All right. So there's an interesting synergy between caffeine and ketones. And what ends up happening is the ketones and the caffeine together ends up producing more ketones. There's an endogenous cycle that caffeine with exogenous ketones helps to propel. Okay. There's an acceleration to that process. So we all know the benefits of caffeine in terms of neural stimulation, right? But caffeine also has its ugly face.
Yes,
right?
Indeed.
It has that crash face to it.
Yeah.
So you go up, you go down. So if you've ever taken like a caffeine shot, a 5-hour energy, any of those types of products, right? You realize that you get that caffeine boost, but sometime later you also get that caffeine crash.
Yeah.
So here's the way we engineered this. Okay, so in a typical energy shot, there isn't any energy. So that's the first differential. So within the keto shot, guess what we have?
A heap of energy.
Ketones.
Yeah.
We have real energy, right? So caffeine isn't energy, it's just a stimulant.
Yes.
Right? Vitamin B12 and 6 and 3 and whatever vitamins you want to throw in there, that's not energy either. Okay. So everything in one of those particular products is just a stimulant of some kind or a micronutrient of some kind, but there's no energy. So how do you have energy in an energy shot with no energy? So that's a fun one for your listeners. But so let's go back to why you're loving this, right? So first of all, when you want to start off your workout cycle and you take the keto shot, you'll notice you kind of get that initial neural stimulation.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's essentially the way it's crafted is that the neural stimulation starts to take place because that basically is effective quickly, right? So now we're running this neural stimulation, and now guess what? We add ketones. So here comes the ketone energy. So now, but boy, taking a look at those neural stimulators like a caffeine, that's a vasoconstrictor. That's just what you don't want in a workout. You want vasodilation, not vasoconstriction, right?
Yeah.
You don't want your heart rate to go up artificially.
No.
You don't want your blood pressure to go up artificially. You want to do that in the course of your own workout. So what if we designed something that gave you the impact of neural stimulation and the energy of ketones, and we drove it down a 4-lane highway? That's the design behind the keto shot. So now we're driving the energy down this 4-lane highway. So why don't we crash? Why doesn't it come back and crash? Because guess what? The effect of the actual energy of that product and the way ketones work in your brain, okay, along with the nootropic now we've added, and the vasodilators to keep your blood pressure lower, right? To keep your veins more open, you don't have that constrictive close and open, and you don't get that crash.
It makes so much sense.
So that's why the keto shot is really taking off, is because it's something different than anybody's ever produced.
Yeah, you think about what supplements have been out previously that may have said they could have done that, and there's nothing that would do that by itself. There's multiples that you could have potentially taken that may have eventually got you there, but it's never going to give you the same effect to what you're saying, once again, because you don't have energy without giving, there's energy drinks that don't have energy in them. The other thing I was thinking is something like a beetroot juice or something, like the beetroot compounds that they use for opening, for pretty much better breath, better dilation, better blood flow in general. But even then, it's probably not going to have the same effect to the level that you're talking about, which is incredible.
No, because you're right. It's going to have an effect, but the advantage that we have, right, is you can't displace the power of the macronutrient of a ketone. There's no neural stimulant that's going to give your brain that energy.
Yeah.
Just not going to happen. So that's why you feel, and I love it, the fact that you say, oh, that's my favorite product.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've given a series of products to a lot of different people, and depending on what they use it for, and I was just hoping to see what you love the most. And you told me exactly what you love the most.
Yeah.
And because of the way you train and the way you treat your body and what you do from a regimen, it makes perfect sense you would have picked the keto shot.
Yeah, definitely. I'm having the BHB plus caffeine right now, the peach shot. That's what I've been having right now. Not the actual keto energy shots, but the actual powder form one that you also have as a product, and it's also great. And one thing I did want to ask, based on what I can see, there's not enough calories in the product to break a fast. Can you confirm that?
Well, hey, intermittent fasting is one of my loves. Okay, so let's talk intermittent fasting, shall we?
Yes.
So in the peach decaffeinated the peach caffeinated product, right? Outside of a ketone, you don't have anything that would be considered a macronutrient.
Correct.
Okay. We publish the caloric impact of ketones on our label. We're one of the few companies that say, you know what, ketones have energy. We're going to tell you how much. Okay. So in breaking a fast, what has to happen is that your body has to kick itself into some form of digestive process.
Yeah.
Ketones don't require a digestive process. They are absorbed by the blood and used by the body. Now, if you were going to do any kinds of fats with that.
Correct. The MCT one, the Prime D plus MCTs. Yeah.
Right. people may contend you're breaking a fast because it takes a digestive process of some kind to get the MCT converted to a ketone.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And that was my thought around it. And we're actually running an intermittent fasting challenge. When this podcast comes out, it will be live. So for anyone who's running on that, there's definitely multiple products. And to be honest, because you're feeling energy with the ketones, once again, it is really good for crunching that hunger curve that you get when you are doing intermittent fasting of the morning. Sometimes people might rely on, say, a caffeinated beverage like a coffee or something like that. Whereas I've found this to be, it's almost scary how filling it is to the extent where it's been times where it's come to like 2 o'clock and I'm like, oh crap, I haven't eaten yet because I've potentially utilized these products instead. So, I mean, that's definitely something that is very valuable.
I think it really makes intermittent fasting a breeze.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It just makes, it gives your listeners the easiest ability to intermittent fast of anything I can tell you about. Because if you're not hungry, you just can continue to fast.
Yeah.
And the longer you fast, the more endogenous ketones your body's making.
Going to create, yeah.
So think of it as, man, this is the coolest starter and continuer of intermittent fasting there is. And man, as we crank that up, now you get the endogenous ketone production also kicking in. Because I believe there's two main properties or purposes to intermittent fasting that I could talk to your listeners about. I think the first one is obviously the ability of your body to make ketones by having a gap in your diet. Mm-hmm. So going 12, 16, 18 hours, it certainly triggers your body's ability to make its own endogenous ketones. We would agree with that, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I think the next main purpose, the one I'm really, really interested in, is something called autophagy.
Yep, same.
So what do you do with all the broken cells and the cells that aren't working and maybe they're not working for a reason, right? What if you could have a way to kind of de-junk your body of those particular cells, or maybe even reactivate cells that aren't working too well? Mm-hmm. What if you could do that? Okay. Well, a couple of things happen from that process. One, autophagy gives your body, I believe, the ability to build new cells.
Yeah.
Okay. And it gives your body the ability to produce more energy from the cells it has. Mm-hmm. So if you take a look at it, it's almost like the 4-point basketball play, right? They missed a shot and you score, right? That's a 4-point turnaround. So in autophagy, what if you could clear out the space occupied by junk in your cells, for lack of a better term, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, what if you turn on all the cells that are there to do better?
Yeah.
Now you got the 4-point shot. And I think autophagy, along with the ability to create endogenous ketones and sustain that ketone production, really makes intermittent fasting an unbelievably powerful and valuable process. Mm. So I would encourage anybody who's listening that intermittent fasting is one of the greatest tools there is out there.
I really like that analogy of it, how you look at it. I've kind of always looked at it as more so the cells are like we regenerate our bodies over 7 years, and sometimes we can speed up that process by giving the body the time that needs to regenerate. And so that would be in intermittent fasting, because your body's got the chance to actually focus and do the things it needs to and not worry about, say, for instance, eating food or digesting, whatever foods in the system. And so that was kind of my way of looking at it. But I really like the 4-point turnaround basketball play. That's a cool analogy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess there's many ways I want to go with it. One more thing I did want to ask about the products is why we talked about why potentially mixing ketones with caffeine was valuable. Why would you mix ketones with MCT, and why is that valuable?
So let's say, for instance, that if you really think through, let's say, for instance, that you want to, let's take people who want to lean up, and people who want to lose weight. I'm sure there's a few of those out there.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say that's one of your particular goals. Okay. So what if you had the ability to utilize one product, okay, let's say the BHB product that we've created, okay, to do some of that particular heavy lifting, okay, but then what you really want to do is maintain, you know how we talked about the recidivism?
Yes.
And you know, I don't know if your listeners know this, but when people go on a diet, whether that's a diet for performance, a diet to lose weight, a diet to do whatever, okay, what do you think the chances are of them maintaining that diet?
Yeah. The percentage numbers are not great based on human standards so far.
All right. So here's your magic number today. It's 5%.
Wow.
Okay. Here's another number you'll love. What's the average time somebody will stick on a diet? I'm very intrigued to actually know this. 7 days.
Okay. That's more than I was expecting.
Well, that's taking in all the diets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just take a look at those two stats for a second, right? You've got 7-day duration and 95% drop off. All right. So you're back to, how easy is it to get back to square one? It's not very hard.
Yeah.
Right. But here's what happens in a normal diet. This is why I think this is important for us to talk about the products, and appreciate you bringing up those two different ones. So let's say, for instance, that in this diet, if you're really not doing it utilizing ketones, and you're just using calorie deprivation, okay, you will burn muscle. And what's interesting is you'll burn muscle before you burn fat. So in the hierarchy of what gets burned first, your muscle gets burned before your fat, because your body is glycolytic. It's based on glucose.
Yep.
Right. So what happens when somebody utilizes ketones, utilizes the low carb approach? What happens is the body spares the muscle and it starts burning the fat. And we'll get into the studies just a little bit later, because we've now scientifically proved that's true. So what is fun about that concept is, so now we're utilizing fat for fuel. We're also adding ketones for fuel. And so at some point, what we really want to do is maintain, right? We want to maintain ourselves in wherever we get to without now going backwards. And the number one reason that people go off of diets is they're hungry. The single number one reason, right? And then you get lifestyle reasons. There's a whole 5 or 6 powerful ones, but the number one is you're hungry. The second one is, catch this one, you're tired. So let's take a look at the two things that ketones, especially when you add ketones with MCT, do. You're no longer hungry and you're no longer tired. Whoa. So the number 1 and 2 reason why that 95% statistic is there, we've solved. And so that is the prime D product for people who have gotten where they want to get to, right? Where they've really shed the pounds. They want to continue down that path of keeping it off, or even improving that lean muscle mass ratio. That prime D, there couldn't be a better product to do that with. So the BHB itself is really that tool to help you really move quickly in that direction, right? But that sustainability and making sure that, because one of the things I saw about your website was really amazing. You want to help the people who are involved in that lifestyle keep it off, right? Isn't that one of your main objectives? How do we keep where we get to?
Yeah, definitely.
So you brought up the perfect question. Why do you use this tool and why do you use that tool? This tool is to help you get there, and this tool is to help to keep you there.
That's really cool. I love that. Yeah, definitely. I want to add in that the Prime D, the scoop that's in there, the spoon scoop, it pranked me so many times. And I know this is like, it was literally just the functionality of me trying to use it probably while sleep deprived, but it's got a big long scoop, like a big long handle on it, which is perfect because when you get to the bottom of the container, of course you need it. But what you cannot do is shove it back in with the spoon first. You have to put the spoon head on the top when you try to push it back down. And so I tried to put it in and I ended up flicking freaking Prime D everywhere when I first used it. And I just had to laugh to myself. I'm like, this is something I'll have to tell the boys about when we interview. Oh, that's great.
Well, that's exactly right. We, when we designed that scoop, we said, that last half of that jug is really pretty important to use. So how are we going to make that happen? But the first part of the jug, you're right. You've got to put it in that way. And that's that's such a good tip. We should probably, I should definitely tell Jordan, get that as a customer service tip. That's
with a warning note or something. Does it matter? Does it matter which MCTs you use? So for instance, there's the different size chains, and you've got your C8, your C10s, your C12s. Does it? I noticed that you guys use C8. Does it matter? Is there a difference between the three, and why would you use 8s over any of the others?
Absolutely. C12, there's no evidence that converts to ketones at all. So that's lauric acid.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we see, interestingly enough, is that lauric acid may add to people's weight problem. So it's very close to a saturated fat. C12 is one step away from C14, which is a saturated fat. So you get a lot of it acts in many cases like a saturated fat or a long chain fatty acid, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. When you get to C10 and C8, those are the two, what we call ketogenic triglycerides. And when you take a look at those two, the question is, which one converts to ketones the quickest? Well, the one that has the shortest chain, until you get into a short chain fatty acid, right, is the best one, and that is C8.
Yeah.
So that's why we use C8 in our product, is because it has the fastest flash point in terms of the ability to convert to ketones.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, something that we've kind of breezed over a little bit was the whole factor that I talked about. Hey, I'm not necessarily on a ketogenic diet, but I'm still taking these ketone products. What is there any ramifications for something like that? Is there effects on the fact that if I'm taking ketones, and I'm never taking them at the same time that I'm eating, but is there the fact that, hey, I'm going to just utilize these ketones and store everything else, and potentially store extra fat when having these products instead of if I was on a ketogenic diet where you're just utilizing the ketones? Is that something that you need to look out for, or is it just a myth that I don't know that I'm making up right now?
It's really not. It's more of a complicated answer. If you, okay, first of all, there's nobody on the planet, including us, that can tell you that we have found a way to supersede the law of thermodynamics. Okay, so law 1 of thermodynamics basically says that if you don't use the energy you put into a machine, that energy will either be lost or stored. Okay. The human body is no different than that. Right. So this is what I tell people, because I get this question a lot, which is a super question. So here's the answer that I tell people. I think it makes a lot of sense, is that if you utilize ketones, the body's uptake of ketones will be first and foremost. Okay. So we've shown that it will displace glucose over ketones. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're adding ketone calories. You're adding energy that way, mm-hmm. right? Now let's follow up your question. Yours says, gee, if I'm adding energy through ketones, what does it do with the rest of the energy? Will it store that energy? What does it do? Will it add fat? Will it add calories? Okay. Well, here is the answer. Yes and no. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, from a perspective that if you continue to eat your 13 Big Macs at McDonald's and then you take ketones on top of it, you're not going to see a lot of weight loss.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's what ketones do, and you said it yourself. The second your body interprets ketones, it has a long memory. It has your DNA memory, mm-hmm. right? It knows, oh my gosh, ketones, time for treats. All of a sudden, it starts suppressing appetite. It suppresses your carb cravings. Mm-hmm. It starts suppressing eating. So naturally, what ends up happening is, guess what? Matty, you eat less.
Yeah.
You just naturally eat less. And that calorie deprivation that occurs naturally, that's caused from those ketones, ends up being the best way your body is responding, saying, hey, I don't think I need all this energy. Don't eat anymore. Let's just enjoy where we are. So all of a sudden you get into this really cool mood cycle. You now taking ketones, you're happier, you're less hungry, you don't worry about food. And the one thing I'll tell your listeners, something it's dawned on me. I've been in a ketogenic regimen for almost 6 years now.
Yeah.
And I go off and on, just like you do, in terms of cycling with carbs here and there, right? Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what's interesting. When you're not hungry, your ability to make better food choices goes up 1,000,000%.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
When you're starving, you'll eat anything.
Yeah.
And the thing that's most prevalent out there to eat is fast food.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, when you're not hungry, when you no longer have to maintain morning, noon, night type of eating regimen, when you can go to an intermittent fasting regimen, or where you only eat, and this is one of the suggestions I would give your listeners, there's a few really cool tips. One is only eat when you're hungry. Okay. The second tip is the second you discern you're getting full, stop. Mm-hmm. What happens from that point on is all of a sudden your body takes over. Your mood's improved, your energy's up. So now no longer are you hungry, no longer do you feel energy deprived. And guess what? You don't eat. And then when you don't eat and your body's not hungry, you make better choices. You're going to eat better. Your food choices will go up dramatically. So what ends up happening I apologize for the length of this answer.
No, it's great.
This is such a great question that when you get to a point where you're taking exogenous ketones, you're taking the first step to allowing your body a break. Mm-hmm. And a break from having to constantly feed it glucose and spike insulin and create that ghrelin, that ghrelin push that makes you want to eat anything you have in the house.
So ghrelin or ghrelin being the hormone that we have in our body that says, hey, you're hungry. It's usually why you get like the tummy rumbles, for instance.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Anyway, that's a very long answer to a very good question. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it's very insightful. And I think it comes back to like that. It's something that we try to push onto a lot of people is, hey, you do need to always look after your diet. Like you can't just supplement and expect that you're going to lose weight. Like you said, you can't eat 13 Big Macs in a day and expect to drop that weight. So it's great. It's very clear, very precise. Maybe let's, we're kind of running out of time here, but one thing I'd love to ask is what are the studies, maybe some of your favorite studies you guys have conducted? And what are the things that we haven't talked about within those studies that are maybe should be, or I guess that are prevalent and very relevant to the listener?
So when you do a human clinical trial, you have to do a human clinical trial on enough people that the results make some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have just finished two major clinical studies, and I can tell you this is that we're able to now demonstrate and claim that the exogenous ketone formula that we have put into our Real Ketones has now clinically been proven to reduce weight, to reduce fat, to reduce hip circumference, and also to increase lean to fat mass. Okay?
Yeah, incredible.
We've also demonstrated that it lowers normal LDL cholesterol, and it also lowers normal insulin levels. We now have clinical proof of those things, that exogenous ketones taken twice a day in our protocol, given our specific formula, can accomplish. Okay? So that was one big, beefy clinical trial.
Yeah.
So here's the next one. Okay, and you'll love this one. So the next clinical study we did is we compared various formulations that we had created and said, what formulation works better than another formulation, right? So in the formulation that we had created initially, that has a pairing of BHB MCT in a specific ratio using our quad salt formula, because we have 4 salts in our BHB that actually add hydration. Okay.
Yeah. So increasing electrolytes within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because electrolytes are so critical. You know that.
Yes.
But we were able to demonstrate that we can increase physical reaction time by 9.9%. Utilizing exactly. Any athlete like yourself gets that number instantly.
That's a huge number. Like you see 1% changes every once in a while, but 9.9%, that's big.
So we can now demonstrate clinically that we can improve physical reaction time by 9.9%. Okay.
What was the test for that? That's really interesting.
What was the test for that?
Yeah. What was it? Yeah. Go on.
What you do is that you do a 28-point EEG test, and during that period of time, people do a physical reaction test.
Yeah.
And you measure them. This is over an 8-week period of time where we took, here's what their readings were before they started the study, and after 8 weeks, this is what occurred.
Uh-huh.
So in 8 weeks, we were able to improve physical reaction time by 9.9%. 8 weeks. That's not a very long period of time.
Not at all.
So the next one is very interesting. You know how you have said before, you said earlier on that now that you have a newborn, your sleep deprivation is pretty heavy, right? So what happens when people either have sleep deprivation or they are mentally challenged, they don't have clarity?
Yeah.
All of these things that happen, all of a sudden you become stressed out.
Yeah.
And as a father, you can relate to this, I'm sure, pretty quickly. So one of the biggest detriments, I think, to great health is stress. So what if
Agreed.
I told you that with this particular formula we had created, that we can reduce mild normal range stress by 40%?
What? That's insane.
What would you think of that?
Yeah. And once again, how did you work the study out for that?
So there's a specific study, the Hamilton anxiety test,
Mm-hmm.
that is pretty well accepted around the world for one of the premier means of testing anxiety. So again, over that 8-week period of time, we tested. Again, we started with 57 people in that particular study, and we ended up with 43 because people drop out of studies as you go on.
Yep.
8 weeks is a long period of time for compliance, but at the end of that, we were able to demonstrate with one of our formulas that we could reduce stress by 40%. And we're not talking chronic stress.
No, not at all. Yeah.
We're not talking people who have stress indexes over 14 or 15. We're talking people who have a normal range of stress, and that's happening on a periodic day-to-day basis, like you're exhibiting right now, being a new father,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If we can reduce stress and anxiety in those normal ranges by 40%, we have a way to really help people stay off some of the prescription drugs, we believe.
Yeah. That's incredible. That is really incredible. And I mean, coming into this, I was already a fan of the product. Like I said, I've been using it and I've really enjoyed it. But I mean, to find out some of these extra things, like 9.9% increased reaction time is ridiculous. And then to also figure out how much it's helping just a regular individual with their basis of stress. And something that we do a lot of is working with companies, working with individuals to reduce stress, because stress mitigation is something that so many people need help with based on the fact that we've just got so much stress going on in the world right now. You're just so connected and it's hard to remove any of that. So that's incredible. That's really good.
So, if we go back to, let's go back to our body composition study.
Mm-hmm.
I think that your listeners would enjoy knowing that our product, our formulation in that particular arena reduced weight in 8 weeks. And catch this, how we were talking about the reduction of calories is
Yep.
so prevalent in all these other diets. They're calling for 1,000 calorie reduction. I believe one company did their test on somebody eating only 500 calories, right?
Wow.
But this particular study, there was no change of exercise, only a 300 calorie deficit.
Mm-hmm.
They were able to lose 6.7 pounds in 8 weeks.
So about 3 kilos. Okay. Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, 4.7 of the 6.7 was pure fat.
Yeah. Okay.
The lean to body mass ratio increased 528% over the placebo group, and the hip circumference increased almost 340% over the placebo group. And that's in 8 weeks.
Yeah, wow. That's incredible. And 300 calories less is not a big amount either.
It's half of the Big Mac.
Yeah.
Right? That is what is so incredible. How easy is it to reduce a half a meal?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, Garry, I think that's actually a really good place to leave it. I think maybe the best thing to do is where we can send individuals if they did want to trial out the products. And like you said, the best thing for you to do is actually just trial it yourself now. I mean, you've got your Australian distributor as well as the distributors over in the States, which is your company, which is realketones.com. I think the Australian distributor is realketonesaustralia.com.au.
That is correct.
Spot on. And is there anywhere else that they can follow along?
Yeah, those are the two websites that work the most. Of course, it's always helpful for somebody to get logged into our Facebook and to also Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very important when they sign up to be on our email list, because we send out a lot of interesting information from that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to tell people about is that we have designed an app.
Yes.
We designed a body app that allows somebody to construct a very, very good 30-day program that will actually, based on the goals that they've placed in there, tell them exactly what to do, what to eat, how to develop their diet based on what those goals are.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And is that a paid app?
It's free.
Wow. Not often you come across that.
There you go.
You guys are incredible. Well, yeah, Garry, thank you so much, man. That has been really insightful. I've actually learned a lot. I thought I had a fair grasp on it, but it's just interesting to find out the extras and the insights. And like I said at the start, like it's so cool to see you guys putting so much money back into your own product and doing the studies and figuring out what you need to figure out to make the product as great as it is. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on the program. Appreciate it very much.
You're so welcome. Visit thechieflife.com for all of your nutrition coaching needs, your own personalized meal plan, as well as how you can get involved with one of our 7-pillar retreats.